Welcome to the ADP Average Dudes Podcast Week 2 preview. I am your average dude host, Tanner Ward. I will be going game by game to break down all my rankings, starts, sits, avoids, and even list off some stashes for you. So go follow us on Twitter at ADP Dudes so you can see the full rankings posted right there for you, right off our Twitter to help you with all your start sit questions. You can also tweet us all your start sit questions at ADP Dudes. And also find our YouTube page at Average Dudes Podcast. Little at symbol there. You can just search ADP Dudes and you will find us there as well. This week, the game by game preview is coming out a little bit late. I'm expecting this to come out usually be out by Friday morning throughout the season. My rankings will be adjusted after Thursday night. So if you're following along on Twitter, I will have rankings out before the Thursday game, sometimes out either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. Be rankings out, and then I will readjust them after the game. I'm going to remove all the Thursday night players. So some guys are going to. I've already went out once. I will probably lose audio once or twice through this. Hopefully, I will bounce back quick enough. But like I said, on this one, Justin Jefferson, he's no longer my wide receiver one because he's already played this week. So Tyreek Hill is my wide receiver one. So just so you understand, as I go through a couple of these players, some players will be removed. Whoever played on Thursday night throughout the rest of the year. All right, so let's get started here. We're going to open up. We're going to go right down chronological order, all the noon games first, then the afternoon, Sunday night, and 2 Monday night football games this week. So we'll get to all that. Let's kick this thing off. I'm going to try and keep this at a pretty quick pace here. All right, Raiders at Bills. Bills minus 8.5 in this one, over under of 47. One of the higher totals here in this Sunday slate. Last week, Josh Allen, he looked like he was down 2 scores with 2 minutes left the entire game. This is a good matchup. I don't think the Raiders are very good. Allen in this offense should be able to get some things straightened out here. Raiders defense gave up 16 points to the Broncos last week, but I think that has more to do with the Broncos themselves than it does the Raiders defense. Again, I think the Bills should roll, or I guess in their case, circle the wagons. I'm starting on the Raiders side, starting Jacobs, starting Adams. Doesn't look like Jacoby Myers cleared concussion protocol. So after his big week one, he will not be out there for him. So outside of Jacobs and Adams, I'm sitting all Raiders. No worries for me with Josh Allen. Obviously, if you drafted him, you probably don't have another quarterback in one QBs anyways. You're starting him without worry. Starting Diggs. James Cook is a high-end RB2 for me. I'm not quitting on Gabe Davis yet. You can flex him where you need him. I do like guys like Jason, Van Jefferson, Kadarius Toney, and Allen Robinson over Gabe. So it's got to be a little bit of a deeper league for me to roll Gabe out. But I believe I have a three receiver, 2 flex league that I'm probably starting him this weekend myself. I don't want to start a Bills tight end. Kincaid is 19 for me. Knox is tight end 25. The Bills DST is a start. They are third for me this week. Over to the Ravens at the Bengals. Bengals 3 points favorites, 46.5 in this one here for the total. Hopefully you did not make any rash moves with your Bengals last week after a historically bad game for Joe Burrow in this offense. They're going to right the ship. This should be a good this should be a good back and forth game, for a divisional matchup here. These quarterbacks are back-to-back for me with Burrow at QB6, Lamar at QB7. I am ranking the Ravens running backs, Gus, Justice, Melvin. Justice Hill did get the 2 touchdowns last week, but he really didn't do anything else. Both him and Gus Edwards are both mid to low end RB3s for me. Zay Flowers is a wide receiver 2 for me this week. Technically, he's just outside at wide receiver 25. I am tempering expectations with the anticipation of Mark Andrews back. I am still starting Flowers, though, like I said, as a wide receiver 2. Andrews is tight end 2 for me. With Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham, they're both outside my top 50. Joe Mixon is RB10. Jamar Chase, wide receiver 3. Higgins, wide receiver 11. Not worried about that week 1 goose egg. Irv Smith is tight end 20. I would just rather have Kincaid, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, Zach Ertz, and Chigo Conquo. DSTs are both outside my top 15. Would rather start the Ravens if I had to choose between one of them, though. Chiefs at the Jags. Jags 3-point underdogs at home. Highest over-under on the weekend slate. 51 total points from Vegas on this one. There is no doubt about it. This is your ADP Average Dudes podcast above average game. Above average game of the week. It's a working title. Give me a couple weeks to get that one out smoothly. There's going to be a bountiful amount of points scored in this one, or at least there better be. But how many Chiefs wide receivers can you really trust? For me, Kadarius Toney's the highest ranked Chiefs receiver at 49th. I will never quit on you, Sky Moore, but I am going to sit you. He's wide receiver 55. If he is invisible this week, then I am ready to drop him. Not quitting him, just dropping him in a redraft. Rashi Rice, my last one, ranked at wide receiver 59. Pacheco is running back 29. Not excited to play him. I would rather have Zach Moss, Raheem Mostert, sitting all the other Chiefs running backs this week. You got to see something from McKinnon, I think, before you start playing him. Sit Kelsey this week. Just kidding. He is tied in one, obviously. On the other side, Evan Ingram tied in 3 by default. So should see some good tight ends in this matchup, or a lot of tight end points, I guess you should say. Trevor Lawrence is QB3 for me this week. I love his upside for this potential shootout. Always assume Mahomes is QB1 unless otherwise stated. Travis Etienne's running back 9 for me. Tank RB45. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 4. I am back in on Christian Kirk this week. He just was too good last year to really sink. I was kind of off of him this year, but I have him as a wide receiver 3. So that's kind of what I was thinking of him in this offseason. Zay Jones, he is also a play at wide receiver 43 if you need a flex. Kirk or Jones, one of them should have a good week. You're sitting the DSTs. As you notice, I'm going to go through this. I'm just saying this how I typed it out. So some games I'm going to list off the away team first and the home team. Sometimes I'll go position by position, just whatever I was feeling in the moment as I type this up. Chargers at Titans. Titans 3-point dogs, 45.5 the over under. This is my sneaky above average game of the week. The Titans defensive strength is against the run. They struggle against the pass last year and last week. They give up over 300 yards to Derek Carr in the air. I think this is a fantastic week for Justin Herbert and company. The only thing that we really need for this game to be a shootout is Ryan Tannehill to remember how to play quarterback. He looked awful last week, and a bounce back from him could make this a great fantasy matchup for Titans pass catchers. Austin Eckler officially ruled out. I feel like I'm ranking Joshua Kelly at his floor right now at RB 18. Very, very tough matchup with the Titans defense. But he has low end RB1 upside with the goal line work. I would not be surprised if he finishes between running back 10 and 14 this week. He's going to get the goal line work. We'll see how much Kellen Moore wants to force the run this week. I believe I said it on the postgame show with the Rat Pack Fantasy Football, which you can catch on YouTube. I'll be on that pregame show Sunday from 11 Central till kickoff. It felt like the Chargers were running more than passing, more so because of just how successful they were running against a bad Dolphins run defense. This week, I think they air it out with Justin Herbert. Because of that, Herbert's QB4. Keenan's my wide receiver 9. Big Mike Williams, wide receiver 22. I'm probably going to be the high guy on him just about all year. Quentin Johnson's a sit. Hang on to him, though, if you can stash him. But if you do have to cut him in leagues, I've had to already make that cut a couple times to fill kickers and tight ends just last week. Gerald Everett is whatever, tight end 23. Ryan Tannehill up to QB 22 for me just because I think he'll be chasing points. I do have him over Baker, Jimmy G, Sam Howell, Desmond Ritter, and Kenny Pickett. I am starting him over CJ Stroud. The toughest call for me, if you're in a 2 QB league, Stafford or Tannehill, I am leaning Stafford right now. I believe I have him one spot ahead. More than likely, all of what I just said is only relevant in 2 quarterback leagues. Big game for Derrick Henry. I have him for an anytime touchdown already on a bet, and he's my RB5. D-Hop is questionable with an ankle. As of now, D-Hop's my wide receiver 15 if he's good to go. Traylon Burks at 42. Chig is tight end 16. If D-Hop can't go, Traylon Burks now moves up to a tight end 3 for me. I would rather have him over Hollywood, London, Josh Reynolds, Kendrick Bourne. He'd be just behind Michael Thomas, Christian Kirk, and Romeo Dobbs. So he'd be sandwiched kind of in that mid wide receiver 3 range for me. If D-Hop is out, if D-Hop does not play, he's a wide receiver 4, or if D-Hop does play, he's a wide receiver 4 for me. Again, if you want to kind of see how all these guys are laid out, because I know I'm throwing out a lot of names, go check out the rankings on Twitter at ADP Dudes. As far as defenses go, Chargers, they are a streamer this week. They're my DST 12. Packers at Falcons. This game's kind of flipped back and forth. Falcons are now -1.5. Over-under's 40.5. That stayed pretty consistent with the total being around that 40 mark. But the Packers have flip-flopped between favorites and underdogs. Looks like they're going to find themselves as road underdogs for the second consecutive week. This time, 1.5 points. in Atlanta. I think the biggest factor is just injuries. Aaron Jones not looking good to play. Christian Watson, I think he does play, but he has been limited all week. I think he was actually DNP up until Friday and then was limited. And then Quay Walker just cleared concussion protocol, so he's going to be good to go. But I do think those three names specifically was a big reason why that line flipped. So I think on the big side of things, let's just see if Arthur Smith is going to continue to be a mean man this week. As long as he's not throwing the ball to his 4th and 8 overall picks in the NFL draft, I'm going to say his mustache looks dumb. If he does start throwing them the ball, I think his mustache looks great. That's how it works. He's definitely that kid that on Christmas morning, he opens up all his really expensive toys that his parents worked so hard to get him, and then he just goes into the corner and plays with the cardboard box that they were packaged in. That's what Arthur Smith is right now with these offensive weapons. Our only hope is that this Packers offense can jump out to an early lead. I would love that personally, but just from a fantasy aspect, you all should love it too. And that forces Arthur Smith to have to throw the ball. If we can get Ritter into the high 20s in pass attempts, then we might just have fantasy relevant Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I am a little worried that this Atlanta defense could give Love fits for his first real road start. I am hopeful that this offense comes out on fire, though, and we hit that over because 40 points could be a little bit of a snoozer. Jordan Love is QB 16 for me. I am starting him over Carr, Russ, Mac Jones, and Stafford, sitting Ritter until I see Arthur Smith be a nice person. Aaron Jones, again, did not log a practice this week. Doesn't need it, though. I mean, from, repetition wise. But so if he does play, I'm expecting around 12-ish touches, maxing out at 15. He is currently my RB 15. I'm kind of expecting him to not play, though. If Jones does not go, AJ Dillon, aka the mayor of Door County, would get a bump into my top 30. If he continues to look like he did last week, though, do not be surprised if this is Emmanuel Wilson's job this week. If he gets on the field, he looked very good this preseason, so I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Jones is averaging 1.5 yards per carry again. That we see some more Emmanuel Wilson this week. If Aaron Jones doesn't go and the Packers are only running out AJ Dillon and Patrick Taylor, I'm gonna need someone to check in on my personal health around 3:30 p.m. Central Time. That's going to drive me crazy if they just run those two out again. Christian Watson, again, as I said earlier, he finally logged a limited practice on Friday. He's my wide receiver 27 currently. Dobbs, he was a full go on Friday. He's my wide receiver 32. He does drop to about 36 for me if Watson goes. So he's still a wide receiver 3 or flex play for me. Jaden Reed's the big one. If Watson's out, Reed's a flex play. If Watson's a go, you're sitting Jaden Reed. Luke Musgrave tied in 13. He's a top streamer if no Watson. He's still a decent streaming option with Watson in there. I think he's going to be a nice safety net for Love. And he's also just a tough matchup for defenses as well. Clearly the big test for the Packers run defense. They have just so many new young guys up front, or first and second year guys, really. It's a unit that has traditionally really struggled the last decade with Rodgers' tenure. Bijan's my RB6, hoping for more than 10 rushes, but I hope he keeps those 6 receptions. Tyler Allgeier's RB33. If the Packers can score, as I mentioned earlier, we will see how Arthur Smith distributes touches in a negative game script. You're going to sit London where possible till we do see some pass volume. He's my wide receiver 37. I'm not moving away from him. He's a hold for me, even a buy low, if you will. But right now I'm sitting and waiting. Pitts is my tight end 8. If you drafted him, you start it. You start him. The only guy that I think I would have picked up for this week and play over him is Hunter Henry. That's pretty much it for being over Pitts. Packers are my DST 13. Falcons are 21. All right, let's go to Detroit. Seattle at Detroit. Lions 4.5-point favorites. I think this line was at 5.5 earlier in the week. Now it's 4.5, 47.5 total. Are we about to relive the magic that was week 4 Seattle at Detroit last season? Maybe not quite a 48-45 slugfest, one of the best fantasy games of the entire year. But this is a little bit of another sneaky ADP above average game. We will see if this Seahawks makeshift offensive line can handle this Lions pass rush led by Aiden Hutchinson, and if Geno can look more like his breakout 2022 self. Right now, I have Geno at QB 15. I do still have him ahead of Love, Carr, Mac, and Russ. I am starting Purdy, Deshaun Watson, and Danny Dimes over Geno. Ken Walker is my RB 17. You're only starting Charbs if you're stuck. I was stuck last week in 2 leagues, and I had to start Zach Charbonnet. You're not doing it this week unless you are really absolutely stuck. if he is going to have any impact in the first half of the season with a healthy Ken Walker, then this is the type of game that Charbs needs to show it, essentially. If he doesn't right now, I don't think he's going to do much in the first half of the year as long as Walker's healthy. We did say a lot over the offseason. Charbs was our second half breakout. So just be patient with him. I have already seen him dropped in a couple leagues. Unfortunately, those leagues benches are a little shallow for me to pick him up right now. Sticking with Seattle here, DK has a good setup. He's my wide receiver 12. This might be the highest I have DK all year. Lockett, wide receiver 23. JSN is wide receiver 46. Jared Goff is QB 8. Big week could be coming from him. I do have Detroit running backs back to back at 12-13. You're starting both. For the record, it's Gibbs, then Montgomery, 12-13. Amon-Ra, my wide receiver 5. Josh Reynolds is a fine flex play in PPR. He's my wide receiver 39. You can probably find a better option than Laporta at tight end. He's tight end 14. Lions also DST 14. All right, we are moving to the Colts at the Texans. Texans -1. Over under is 40. I would not be surprised if this game closes as a pick 'em. The number 2 and the number 4 overall picks square off in what could be the first of many matchups between these two. The Texans have had a really bad have been a really bad matchup for opposing quarterbacks since last season. Lamar did not have a great fantasy day last week. They didn't need him really though to have a great day. I do think Anthony Richardson can have a good week with his legs in a matchup that could see a decent amount of points. Again, 40, very low total by Vegas, but maybe I just have last year's final game between these two in my mind. But there was a lot of points scored in that one. Sometimes you just get two bad teams together and they can make for a fun, high scoring game. I have already taken a Anthony Richardson anytime touchdown. That was parlayed with my Derrick Henry one that I mentioned earlier. Go to Sleeper, go to Picks. If you haven't signed up yet, use code FFLW for Fantasy Football League winners. Use the code FFLW. They'll match you up to $100. So if you put 100 in, Sleeper's going to give you another. But if you missed anything I just said, I'm going to say it again. Why not? Anthony Richardson, Derrick Henry, Jamal Williams, anytime touchdown parlay on Sleeper, code FFLW. I don't think I said this. Anthony Richardson, he's my QB 10. I think I got kind of sidetracked there. All right, back on track. Zach Moss, RB 28 for me. If you went 0 RB, you lost Eckler, you didn't get Kelly, you can definitely play Moss as an RB2 this week. This is about as good of a setup as he's going to have all for as long as he's a starter this year, as long as JT's out. Michael Pittman, that's someone I missed on this offseason. I was definitely wrong about him. The Colts are throwing a lot more than I anticipated. As long as he's getting close to or over 10 targets, Pittman's worth starting as a wide receiver 3 and flex. He is wide receiver 28 for me. I'm not going to get super excited about last week. Anytime your main production comes from a screen pass, that's not really replicable. He's still in my top 30, though. He did find the end zone both times against Houston last year. So Pittman, wide receiver 3 for me. Stroud, going over the Texans now. Stroud's QB 20. Again, another guy that I was low on. Had a terrible week last week, though. I feel right about him. Is Dameon Pierce. This is probably the highest I'm going to have Dameon Pierce ranked all year. He's my RB 20. Again, I think this is a good matchup for him. I'm not going to get cute with Singletary. Don't flex him. Just sit him if you have him. I would still try and hang on to him, though, if you can. Definitely not a guy I'm ready to cut yet. Nico Collins is one of the sneaky best ads this week. Just because everyone's chasing Puka, you can go get Nico if you haven't already. He might even still be out there. I don't know if that's going to be true or not, but he's my wide receiver 26. I am starting him. Both Tank Dell and John Mechie are outside my top 50, avoiding them. All right, let's go to Bears at Bucks. Bucks -2.5 at home. Over under of 41. Man, at so many games flirting with that 40 line for totals. Could be a very low scoring week across the board. I think this could be a very similar game to what the Bucks were in last week with the Vikings. First team to break 20 might win. I said in last week's preview show, the Bucks defense could still be a pain in the side for teams. I said that when we were previewing Bucks Vikings. And I think they could give the Bears offense, some fits this week. Justin Fields, he's still a QB1 for me, coming off what wasn't his best game. He's at 9. I'm not as excited to start Khalil Herbert, RB31. I am stashing Roshan. If you haven't already, go get Roshan Johnson if he's still out there. I'm not looking to play him this week, though. He's just a stash. For me, DJ Moore is wide receiver 24. Darnell Mooney, another name that I don't want to play, but I would flex. I would plan on flexing him at some point this season. I just don't want to really play him this week. Cole Kmet, tight end 17. I mean, he can find himself a top 10 tight end this week if he scores a touchdown, but I mean, who can't that's playing tight end? Baker Mayfield, QB 23 in Superflex leagues. Here's another one. You will not hear from me very often this year. Here's another thing you won't hear from me very often this year. Start Rashad White. Plus matchup for him. He's my RB 19. Yeah, I threw up in my mouth a little bit, ranking him inside my top 20. Mike Evans, I have him at wide receiver 18 this week. Matt will tell you that I hate him, but he is in my top 20. I still have Godwin from him, though. Godwin's top 16. I am just way too high on Bucks this week. 3 different Bucks in the top 20. What could go wrong with that? You can also start their DST as well. I have them 8th overall, so a top 10 defense for me. Oh, what could go wrong with my starts of that many Bucks players? All right, Giants at Cardinals. Cardinals 4-point dogs at home, 39.5. Again, we're flirting with the 40 line with the total. Big bounce back spot for the Giants here. Cardinals defense, they looked better than expected last week. But again, I mentioned it on last week's show, is that I felt like we were just overhyping the Commanders too much because of such a juicy matchup, and we were elevating the Commanders above their talent level, and that's kind of what showed. They had to come from behind late and win. Um, so yeah, the Cardinals defense, they had a good week. They scored a touchdown, but again, was it really the Cards defense that looked so good, or was it Sam Howell just looked bad? We're going to see how the Cards defensive unit looks this week, and if the Giants can actually score some points this week. Danny Dimes is QB 12. He's just still a QB 1 for me because of the matchup. Saquon is my RB 2 overall. Waller is my tight end 7 currently. If he's good to go, I'd move him up to 5. He'd move ahead of Higbee and Hunter Henry for me. Isaiah Hodgins, he's literally my only ranked Giants wide receiver this week at wide receiver 60. I rank 64. Basically avoid Giants wide receivers. Their defense, the Giants, will be a very popular stream this week. They're my DST 6. On the Arizona side, James Conner, RB 16. He's going to be pretty much an RB 2 all year. Hollywood, wide receiver 36. Pretty much anywhere I drafted him, I am sitting Hollywood myself. Zach Ertz, he had 10 targets last week and an almost touchdown. That sounds great. His final line was 6 catches for 21 yards. Yeah, he's a tight end. I have him at 15. Cardinals DST is at 18. I don't even know why I told you that. The 49ers at the Rams. The Rams are 7.5-point dogs now at home. I think this line was 8.5 or 9 at one point. 44.5 is your total here. 2 of the top waiver claims from this week run into what looks like one of the most dominant defenses of the NFL. So can Puka Nacua command a large target share again? Which 49ers pass catcher will have the big week this week at home in the 49ers home field of SoFi Stadium? Brock Purdy is QB 14. Pencil him in for 200 to 220 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey is my RB1. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, they're wide receiver 13, 14 for me, respectively. If you're curious which one's going to go off, you need for that week, and do this all season. Go see what the opposing defense's zone versus man splits are. How often they're in zone, how often they're in man. Looked up a nice tweet here from CBS and Sportsline's Jacob Gibbs. He tweets out so much good stuff. Definitely go follow him. Against zone coverage, Deebo sees the majority of the target share between Deebo and Ayuk. Deebo sees the majority of the target share per route run. So when they're actually out there running routes, Deebo's 27%, Ayuk is 20%. When it's man coverage, it flips. Ayuk dominates. Ayuk is 30% target share in man. Deebo's 15. All right. The Rams only ran a man coverage on 11% or 11% of the time last week. That's all they ran man. That sets up really well for Deebo. You're obviously still starting Ayuk. I have them both just outside as wide receiver 1s at 13, 14. George Kittle's my tight end 4. The San Fran DST is 2nd. If the Rams can find a way to keep this game even somewhat competitive, I think Puka Nacua is demanding another large target share. I am starting him. Let's see. For me, let me just keep going through here. For the Rams, Stafford's QB 21. Kyron, I have him over Akers. Kyron Williams over Cam Akers. Wide receiver 26 for Kyron, 35 for Akers. I said it all week. I was kind of joking with Matt. We were texting back and forth. I said, "Am I going to have Puka over Garrett Wilson this week?" Might be so. I finally laid it out, and I couldn't quite do it. I have Garrett Wilson one spot ahead. Puka is my wide receiver 21. Tyler Higbee is tight end 5, more so by default, though. All right, let's head down to Jerry World. Jets at Cowboys. Cowboys 9-point favorites at home with a disgusting total of 39. This is a fascinating matchup, though. I really wish Aaron Rodgers was still healthy so he could go play at AT&T Stadium again. So many great memories as a Packer fan watching Rodgers play at that stadium. But instead, we have Zach Wilson. Both defenses looked amazing last week. We'll see if the offensive stars can find a way to produce for their fantasy manager still. You're starting Zach Wilson if you're in a 32 team league. Brees Hall is my RB23. Tough matchup, obviously, but I'm sure many people don't have a better option. He's explosive. We saw it last week, 80 something yard run. He can break one off here. Still a tough matchup, but again, if you don't have anywhere to pivot, just start him. Garrett Wilson's my wide receiver 20. I'm not stopping you from sitting him this week if you like someone else's upside. Jets are my DST 11. Dak is QB 11 as we move over to the Cowboys now. Pollard, RB4, CD, wide receiver 8. You're obviously starting them. Michael Gallup, an interesting name to watch this week with Brandon Cooks banged up. I do have him, Gallup, that is, at wide receiver 56. Jake Ferguson, Fergie, he cracks my top 10 at the tight ends. He's my tight end 9. I think his best games are yet to come, though, so I'm not super excited about him this week. Cowboys DST is number 1 overall. All right, Commanders at Broncos. Broncos minus 3.5. 39 is the total. Can I just pass? Do I have to go through this one? Can I just skip it? Honestly, at this point, I'm not sure which offense is better between the Commanders and the Broncos. Denver should be much better, but they were the same old Broncos last week as they were all last year. The stat line, they would have won like 11 or 12 games last year if they just would have averaged 20 points a game on offense. They averaged like 16.2 or 16.4. And then last week they go out against a Raiders team that's not that good, and they scored exactly 16 points. Both of these teams are carried by their defense. The books actually moved this line up. It was at 38. Now it's at 39. So talk about a shootout. Start Sam Howell. How? No. I think that's the last joke I wrote in here. So if you're still listening at this point, thank you. He's my QB 25. Brian Robinson looked like a workhorse last week. Another guy that I missed on this year. He's my RB 22. You're sitting Antonio Gibson, who I definitely thought was going to have more involvement. Week 1, he did not. I still like Dotson this week. Jahan Dotson, he's my wide receiver 19. Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 31. Logan Thomas comes out as tight end 22. Commanders DST 9. Russell, let's ride. 16 points. Wilson is QB 19. I actually did write another one in there. Sorry. I'm going to try and tone that down next week. Javante, he's my RB 21. I think he's going to start seeing more of the workload as the season moves along. But right now, Samaje Perine, he's not going anywhere. Not yet, anyways. He's RB 30 for me. Jerry Jeudy looks like he's playing, and he's not going to have a snap count. Wide receiver 30 as well for me. But that was more of a cautious ranking. I was looking to move him up, but the guys around him, I didn't really want to move anywhere. So I just left him at wide receiver 30. You can start him as your wide receiver 2 still, though, if you're feeling brave. Cortland Sutton, he's still in my top 40, but I'm looking to sit him now with the Jeudy news. You're definitely sitting Marvin Mims at this point. Greg Dulcich, tight end Greg Dulcich has moved to IR. So maybe that Adam Troutman breakout is finally happening. It's Troutman's time to shine. Tight end 18. Broncos DST. They are 7th for me this week. We're on to Sunday Night Football. We're almost done here. Oh, man. This is so much fun. Just talking. Matt's not coming back at me with any rebuttals. Just say whatever I want. Sunday Night Football, Dolphins at Patriots. This is going to be a fun one. Patriots are +3 at home, 46.5. Finally, we're off that 40-point line. 46.5 total in this one. If anyone's going to be able to figure out a way to slow this Dolphins offense down, you'd put your money on Belichick, right? I do believe he's going to put a big focus on limiting Tyreek, and that might just open up some things for some other Dolphins pass catchers, maybe Jalen Waddle. As much as I think they try and slow down this Mike McDaniel's offense, I still think the Dolphins put up points early, and that's a good thing for fantasy because that is going to force the Patriots into a similar situation as last week where they were chasing points. hopefully nets similar fantasy results for us as well. The sweet prince of the ADP, Tua Tagovailoa, QB5. Mostert's someone I would like to avoid, but I still have him ranked as a flex RB27. Devon A. Chain has no injury designation. He looks like he's ready to make his debut. RB51 for me. Tyreek is wide receiver one. Again, like I mentioned earlier, Jefferson, he's out of the player pool now because he played Thursday. So Tyreek's my wide receiver one. Not going to be surprised though if the Patriots do find a way to limit his production a little bit, keep him from making the over the top plays. I also won't be surprised if Tyreek catches 15 passes for 300 yards. I'll never be surprised by that. Jalen Waddle, he's my wide receiver 10. You're sitting Smythe at tight end. Too many other options to play, and I just try to avoid any. I'm never going to play a streaming tight end against the Patriots for sure. They're just too good against them. If you're in a very, 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 very deep league, River Craycraft and Braxton Berrios are two names to actually look for if the Patriots are able to slow down Tyreek. We might see one of them get involved. I believe that they had the same amount of catches last week. I can't remember it off the top of my head. There's only 3, maybe 4, and I believe it's Craycraft that had the touchdown. On to the Patriots. Mac Jones, QB 18. Ramondre is my RB 8. Kendrick Bourne might be a thing. Right now, he's wide receiver 40, so I haven't fully bought in yet, but he might honestly be a thing. There's just the things coming out about Juju not sounding good. The report that his knee could explode anytime. Then there was a report that he's wide receiver 5 on their own team. None of that's coming from directly from the Patriots, though. So, but I picked up Kendrick Bourne in a couple leagues. He's right in that Hollywood, London, Josh Reynolds tier for me this week. Don't blame him if you put him in your flex. Hunter Henry, my favorite streaming option this week. He is tight end 6. I do expect the Patriots to have to chase points, and that is good for Hunter Henry. The DSTs, they're back to back for me with the Finns at 15, Pats at 16. All right. Monday night doubleheader this week. Saints at Panthers will kick it off. Panthers 3-point underdogs at home with you guessed it, 40-point total in this one. So first of the Monday night doubleheaders is the NFC South showdown. This is a big game for the Saints because they have to win these games to win the South. They need to take everything against against the Panthers and against the Bucks there to take home that South crown. I think we're going to see another good outing from this Saints offense. I know I personally will be interested in seeing what this defense looks like on the road because I'm going to be watching them on the road next week in Green Bay. Derek Carr, he's QB 17 for me. Jamal Williams, the leader of the plotter pack. He's RB 24. Kendre Miller is questionable. Keep an eye on him. If he does play, could take some touches between the 20s away from Jamal. I don't think he's going to really take away much in the red zone, especially at the goal line. Chris Olave, easy start, wide receiver 7 overall. Michael Thomas at 24. So he's a wide receiver 2 for me. Rashid Shaheed, great stash, wide receiver 48 if you have the free bench spot. I'm not starting any of the Saints tight ends. Don't ask. And my internet didn't even want to talk about this game anymore because it keeps cutting out. That's 3 already. 3 times it's doing this. I'm going to have a talk with the provider. I'm avoiding all Panthers wide receivers. DJ Chark is questionable, but if you had to start one, I'm going to guess Thielen, but bring a puke bucket if you're relying on him. Hayden Hurst, actually startable, tight end 12, and the Saints DST 5. Last game, let's do it. Browns at the Steelers. 2.5-point dogs, the Steelers are. 38.5 is the total in this one. Just so many games right around that 40. This one, a point and a half below. Out of all the waiver wire pickups this week, all the fab you saw spin on Puka, Kyron, Gainwell. It could be the Browns DST if they were still out there that could score the most points this week. They look dominant against the Bengals. They now play a Steelers team that was dominated so bad by San Fran. Their left tackle, Trent Williams, was rooting for the Steelers to get some first downs so he could catch his breath. That is an actual thing I read this week. Deshaun Watson, he's my QB 13. Nick Chubb, RB3. Amari Cooper is questionable now for Monday. I'm not waiting for him. I'm pivoting away from him. Such a late injury pop up. I believe it was a groin. Definitely trying to pivot away from him. If you have any start sits, definitely tweet us at ADP Dudes. He was my wide receiver 17. Elijah Moore was my wide receiver 41. Moore is jumping up to around wide receiver 30 for me. If there's no Amari Cooper, you can also, if you decide to wait for Cooper on Monday night, you better go look to pick up Donovan Peoples-Jones, because I think he's going to be the answer if Amari's not there. He might be a little bit more relevant this time around. So if you want to stash him, then you can wait for Amari, but I'm going to go ahead and look to pivot away from him where I can. David Njoku, tight end 11. Um, I do like Pat Fryermuth this week. He's tight end 10 for me. I have him one spot in front of Njoku. I have both those guys. Or no, excuse me. I have guys like Fergie and Pitts over both Njoku and Muth. Sorry, I wrote that even to confuse myself. The Browns are my DST for this week. The Cowboys are the only DST I clearly like over them. The other two that I have in front of them, I'd be fine starting the Browns over them. I have the Niners and the Bills in front of the Browns. I'm fine starting the Browns over either one of those. If you pick them up, if you had the bench spot in a high scoring defense, I'm in a couple leagues, defenses score high. So I definitely look to take advantage of matchups like this. For me, Kenny Pickett, QB 28, sit for me in a super flex. Najee is RB 25. You're starting him if you drafted him, because that's what you get for drafting Najee Harris. Jalen Warren, RB 39. No Deontay for a while. They're talking 4 weeks he's going to be out. Still, though, I have George Pickens at wide receiver 29. I'm not super big on him still. Allen Robinson, yes, that Allen Robinson, he could be a flex play because of that, because of Deontay being out. He is wide receiver 50 for me in a sit still. And the Steelers DST, they're 10th for me. So they're still a start in this one. Nothing like ending this talking about Allen Robinson. All right, that's going to wrap it up for your week 2 game by game preview, brought to you by the ADP Average Dudes podcast. I am looking to have this show out on Friday mornings for the rest of the season. Obviously, life can get in the way, but if you follow us on Twitter, we'll always tweet out when a new episode airs. You can also tweet us all your start sit questions. We would love to answer them. Spend Sunday morning getting those answers back over to you. Again, at ADP Dudes, you'll see all new episodes out. We'll answer all your start sits. You can look for week 3 of this out next Friday. You can also find me on Sundays, the Rat Pack Fantasy Football. Be on their preview show. It'll be from 11 a.m. Central until kickoff. I'm going to be on there pretty much anytime the Packers are on the road. I will be on that Sunday morning kickoff show. Again, 11 a.m. Central till noon kickoffs. The Rat Pack Fantasy Football. That was a lot of fun last week. It should be a lot of fun this week as well. All right. Again, send us your questions at ADP Dudes on Twitter, all your start sits. And of course, to everyone out there, thanks for listening and good luck this week.